Thanks for your time. So is this one area where we could affect Russia? Say, sorry, we're not willing to sell you live animal exports at the moment?
Well, look, I won't preempt what comes out of the National Security Committee this morning, but there are a suite of measures that we will look at. And obviously, to have greater influence, impact on Russia, you need to work in unison with like-minded countries. And obviously, Australia will do that. We don't have a great and long trading relationship with Russia, but working in a relationship with other nations in unison will have an impact in sending a strong message about what their actions are having to the global community. And so obviously once the NSC has devised the final makeup of what the sanctions look like, we'll announce that sometime this morning. Okay,
but with your hat on as Agriculture Minister, is this something that could be done? It wouldn't be able to be done perhaps overnight, or it could, I'm not sure, but we could find other markets and it wouldn't punish our farmers. Is it on the table?
Oh, look, let me tell you, with respect to live trade, the prices are sky high at the moment. In fact, I've just come back from Indonesia, where the prices are so high that it's pricing some of their markets out of Australian beef and other live exports. So we have a range of opportunities in which to send it into new markets that are a lot closer than Russia. Obviously, the transport costs are significant to send any product to Russia, and that's why we don't have extensive trade links with them. But I'm not concerned about any trade sanctions that may involve live animals, and we'd have other markets in which to send them to and still maintain the high competitive prices that Australian farmers are receiving now.
And I know previously you've been concerned about doing damage in terms of when we did turn the tap off with Indonesia, long-term damage about that. Would you be comfortable if we decided to turn the tap off on live exports to Russia?
Well, this is a totally different situation, Tom, than what the Labor Party did to the live trade in 2011 when Bill Ludwig got spooked by Four Corners. And instead of calmly working through the issue, as I did when we had a similar issue with sheep in 2018 and reforming the industry, he just turned it off overnight. This is about actually an invasion of another sovereign country. So the circumstances are far different to what the Labor Party had a knee-jerk reaction to, panicked, and caused what will cause you, as an Australian taxpayer, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of compensation to those farmers and industry up there that were impacted by a Labor government.
But you'd be comfortable with this option if it were taken, essentially?
Oh, look, if obviously we get to that juncture whereby that'll have an impact and send a strong message to Russia as an international community that we stand together in condemning what they are doing, then we have to take the high moral ground. We simply can't trade away our morals or values. We have to work in a global community, and as a global community, we'll be better for it.
The so-called ag visa to bring out workers here specifically to work in Australia in some of the areas we need it. You commented earlier this week you were waiting on Marise Payne, the Foreign Minister, to sort of finalise these. Where does that mean we're at? Are there countries or a country that have basically done a deal in principle but they're just waiting for final details? Is that how far down the path we are?
Yeah, so the ag visa came into effect on the 1st of October, and then all that was required is for bilaterals to be completed by the Foreign Minister, Marise Payne. She entered into bilaterals with 4 countries, one of which has made themselves publicly known, and that's Indonesia. So we're waiting on Marise Payne to complete that. She gave a commitment to both myself and the Prime Minister, who made a commitment to the NFF and the National Party, that we would have an ag visa as part of the UK Free Trade Agreement. That's something that we held out on in terms of the UK Free Trade Agreement, making sure we not only got better access, but we got an ag visa as part of it, that Marise Payne would complete this, and she gave that commitment. She completed very early in the new year. So we're expecting that to be completed in the coming weeks. We've already put the preemptive work in, but Tom, with approved employers and labour hire companies to be able to move quickly as soon as the country signs up.
You said, though, very early, I mean, we're nearly in March. Can you give a guarantee to people that want these workers there will be something in place, workers arriving in Australia before the election?
Well, that's only a commitment Marise Payne can give. The responsibility lies with her. We've made it very clear to her as a National Party this is an expectation that this ag visa is put in place, and particularly as we move into a very big peak season in Victoria. Those producers there are looking to be able to fill their labour supplies. I've got to say, in Maurice's defence, the waters have been muddied by the AWU and the Labor Party. We need them to take a deep breath and step back. They've openly gone into these embassies and told these embassies not to allow their workers to come here because they'll be exploited. That generalisation and demonisation of Australian farmers is disgraceful, and the Labor Party need to put their political masters to bed and simply come out and say whether they're going to support an ag visa or not. Because you know what, Tom? You're going to pay for this. Because if we don't have a secure labour supply, every Australian will pay at the checkout because farmers are making investment decisions now not to plant. And if they don't plant, it means they don't supply the grocery stores.
When you say it's up to Marise Payne, though, are you saying it's within her remit? If this doesn't happen before the election, that will be on her?
Well, it's her responsibility as Foreign Minister to undertake these bilaterals. The National Party and my responsibility with the Immigration Minister was to set the framework, to put it in place, and that is a demand-driven program and one in which we'll move towards a pathway to permanent residency. That was what was promised to the National Party. That's what's in place since the 1st of October. The last piece is now for Marise
she ends
Payne
up saying, look, it's getting difficult, details are tricky, what will happen after the election. Would that be acceptable or not?
Well, no, the expectation is that the commitment that the Foreign Minister gave to myself and the Prime Minister and the National Party was that this would be completed before the February this year. So that's what we are saying, that this was her priority that she said she would complete.
Okay.
The visa's been in place since the 1st of October. So there's been plenty of time for these negotiations. We're expecting action, and that's what we'll expect. But you've got to appreciate they are sovereign countries. They get to make their own mind up. And when you've got an AWU that's disgracefully trying to muddy the waters with these embassies, it does make Maurice's job a little harder.
The reports today that there could be billions more in regional infrastructure, and it's a bit of a quid pro quo for the Nationals, albeit dragged kicking and screaming to net zero. Is that the case? Is this a payoff?
Well, this is the power of the National Party in being in a coalition. You can vote for an independent and get a warm, fuzzy feeling for the first 5 minutes, but unless you're inside the room cutting the checks, you don't get to influence regional rural Australia. And that's all the National Party's influence is trying to change, is the influence for regional rural Australia getting our fair share. And so obviously there'll be some further announcements. The National Party came to a position on net zero. Right. We had to, Tom, and I have to say the reason why we came to a position on net zero was because you were going to pay more. You were going to pay probably around $20,000 more extra a year on your mortgage if we didn't sign up, because international markets were going to penalise you. Now, while Clive Palmer might be able to afford to pay for that, I don't think most people in regional rural Australia can afford to pay an extra $20,000 on their mortgage. Their commodity prices would have gone down. So the National Party got...
Was it dangled to Nationals members and senators beforehand, saying, hey, there'll be a payoff down the road, don't worry?
Well, let me say that the National Party has a transactional relationship with the Liberal Party and Coalition, and that's the power of the National Party in representing regional rural Australia. That's the strong voice that regional rural Australia gets, but you only get that when we have the keys to the chequebook and when we have the Treasury benches, and that's why it's important. While some people might want to dabble with some independence, all they get is a professional complaints desk sitting outside yelling and screaming.
Transactional in your words. Barnaby, Joyce and Scott Morrison, credit to Phil Curry for pointing this out, haven't been at the same media conference since Barnaby Joyce took the leadership back in June. It must be very transactional. They won't even be seen together.
Well, we represent two different constituencies, and it's important to understand that Barnaby will be out, as I am, out in the regions, talking to those regional men and women that are out there looking to get their fair share. That's our job. And obviously, the Prime Minister...
It's pretty rare, though, the two leaders not being seen together.
I don't think so. I don't think that you'll find that they need to have a press conference on intersecting issues on regional Australia when we're out running around the countryside and the Prime Minister's another part. Wouldn't it be smarter that we're selling our message in different parts of the country? Got two powerful voices running around in different parts. That's a good use of electoral resources, I would have thought, Tom.
All right, maybe selling different messages too, but we'll perhaps muse over that another time. Minister, thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me, mate.